And we are live, man. Appreciate y'all tuning in to the Coach's Corner here on the Blue Bloods. Myself, my guy, Coach Fred. Coach, how we doing tonight?
Man, just lovely, baby. It was a hot one out there today, baby.
Man, I'm telling you, like I swear, it doesn't matter what I set my AC on in Mobile. And listen, it's funny. I got a call from the SID over at Idaho, and he was like, "Man, I'm chilling outside, working outside," and he was like, "It's like seven." He was like, "It's like mid 80s, no humidity," and I'm like, "Dude, I'm melting down here just in the house with the AC on."
Sticky, sticky, sticky. Now,
It,
the trade off in about 2 months, what is he
that's
going
a
to be
fact.
saying?
That's
What-
hey, that's a
what-
fact. Even though they got a dome up there in Idaho, so I guess they're probably not too worried about it. But I won't trade those winners, man. I've been to Kansas, and that's good enough for me. He wants me to come up for a game in October, and I'm like, "You're lucky you're in a dome, because there's no chance I was coming if you guys are playing outside."
I've worked in Kansas, and I can tell you that's no fun. But even though you say they're in that dome, you got to get in the dome. So you've got to
Oh
come from outside to get in the dome, and that could take you out.
man, we got a lot of great topics tonight. We're gonna kick it off here though. I'm leaving tonight to head up to Norfolk, Virginia for MEAC Media Day live Friday from Norfolk, Virginia, man. And listen, Delaware State bringing Wade Inge, running back, linebacker Mario Goings, Howard, running back Jared Hunter, defensive back Kenny Gallup Jr. representing the Bison. Morgan State running back Jabriel Johnson and linebacker Lawrence Richardson representing the Bears of Morgan State. Norfolk is bringing Barron Franks II and defensive back Joseph White. Of course, no surprise here. Davius Richard, Khalil Baker, obviously representing Central, the reigning MEAC Offensive and Defensive Player of the Year. We got South Carolina State bringing Corey Fields and Patrick Godbolt from the linebacker position. Coach, in your opinion, man, we won't probably go as deep as we did for SWAC, but who is going to, let's just be honest. Do we think they're going to repeat as preseason offensive defensive player of the years with Davius Richard and Khalil Baker?
I don't see how you don't. Um, I especially on the offensive side, it was just head and shoulders above. Um, I don't see how he doesn't come back as that. Uh, Defensively, maybe a little tighter, but I mean they took the whole shebang last year. They both returned. I don't know how they don't get the preseason nod.
Yeah, I feel like you said, offense, it's going to be consensus. It's Davius Richard, but defense, I think, has a little bit of ambiguity. I'm pretty sure they'll give it to Khalil Baker, but you do have FCS All American Elijah Williams for Morgan State. You've got FCS All American Kenny Gallup for Howard. And then on top of that, Jablonski Green was hurt last year. That's a guy who was in the running just 12 months ago. So I think it'll be interesting, but that's simple, man. But the bigger question, Coach, we know Central going to be the preseason favorite to take the conference. When you look at the other five spots, who do you expect to kind of line up in that two through six range in the MEAC? Because I feel like that is a much bigger talking point rather than who's going to be the preseason player of the year.
And we don't even have to go any farther than the two spot because I think Howard has put it square on them that they are, ready to take that next step. Um, I think it goes them, and then I think everybody else is just kind of up. If I catch you on this Saturday, if I catch you on that Saturday, kind of thing. But to answer your question, I think Howard has squarely put that on them that they will be challenging at the end of the year. Um, they were co-champs. I get that. They bring back a lot, and then they did an awful lot in the transfer portal. So the expectations, I don't know if it could be any higher for any program over there in the MEAC other than them and Coach Scott. So um, I think that's one of those situations where it's squarely on them, and then everybody else just kind of falls in.
The only question I would have is, do because we know the coaches, SIDs. I don't know if any media for the MEAC votes, but does Buddy Pugh get that Buddy Pugh benefit of the doubt? Because it's like if you're gonna put money on a coach to figure it out, you got to kind of go with Buddy Pugh out of all the options outside of, outside of once you get behind Central.
Yeah, and I hesitate to say because they've been kind of quiet, so to speak, other than the little rumblings in the beginning. But his history, his track record, uh, screams that we won't be caught like we were caught last year. Rarely does he do that kind of thing back to back. So they can be sneaky good, but I think we'll know about them early on as well. So again, I think it's Howard too. Of course, you got to get them probably 2B, 2A, 2B, and kind of go from there. And then I heard some rumblings, and you helped me out with this one here. People are saying that Delaware is going to be much better. Now, I don't know when they say much better, are we talking top 3, give me a piece of that championship better, or hey, we are 5-5, 6-5, much better?
Delaware State. I'll be honest. I didn't know that was the team you were going to say. When you said you heard rumblings, I thought we were going to be talking about Morgan. Because I think Morgan's that team that's going to take that next step. Because here's how I look at it. I think we got Central 1, 2, 3, and 4. When you have South Carolina State, Howard, and Morgan, to me, that's interchangeable. Like, I feel like if you want to give the doubt to Pew, that's fine. If you want to give the benefit of the doubt to the co-champs, that's cool with me. And then Morgan, I think they put pound for pound, man for man on paper, I think they have arguably the most talented defense returning in HBCU football. They All-American defensive linemen, like 3 all-conference linebackers. Their secondary is loaded, and then at running back where they lose Alfonso Graham, they go and get J.J. Davis, who was the freshman of the year in the MEAC 2 seasons ago. And so you have all this momentum. Their one question, of course, is quarterback. They got Carson Baker back for it feels like the 9th year of his career, but with Delaware State is so interesting because I love the hire of Lee Hall. Like I said, I think a few episodes back we did, Lee Hall, in my opinion, will be one of the most underrated hires in HBCU football from this past season. No one's talking about it because it's Delaware State, but this is a guy who, let's not forget, he took Morgan to the playoffs his last stint as a head coach. The guy can coach, and he's been around the MEAC. He was just Howard's offensive coordinator. So I think Delaware State's sneaky, but I think for preseason, I would place them 5th right now just because of all the question marks they have. And I think Norfolk, for me, is as much as Central's a lock for 1 for me, Norfolk State should be a lock for 6 for me. Listen, I know Dawson Odums can coach. He absolutely can coach, but man, they lost like all their best players.
Yeah,
they did. I mean, Tyler Long went to Austin Peay. JJ Davis is at Morgan. Their best defensive back, I'm blanking on his name right now. He transferred to Morgan State too. It's like, man, we're going down the list here, and there's not a lot of returning talent. Colby Bird, their best offensive lineman, he graduated. Where do I look? I do like Talbert at wide receiver, who's like their slot wide receiver, but outside of that, I don't love anything that they really have going on right now. And we know Dawson loves to run the football. You got questions at running back and questions at offensive line. That's not a great recipe to be a run-first team.
It doesn't quite mesh up.
No.
And you hit it on the head. They are one of the programs that was just the opposite when you're talking about the transfer portal. And the crazy thing about the kids that transferred out of there that I would love to, maybe we can do a show on. It's not like those kids transferred out to go up, so to speak. They transferred out to go to the same level, basically, FCS. Some in the same conference. So I wonder what he's battling, what he's dealing with, to have that much turnover for guys to say, you know what, I'll just go lateral. I'm established here, but you know what, I'm gonna go down the street to the basically same playing field that I'm on now. So yeah, they have a lot of question marks. And I like how you said that's a lock for that spot. It'll be interesting to see. Like you said, I'm not sure how they do the voting, but I can't wait to see how it actually plays out.
And another thing with this too, I don't know how you feel. I want to get your coach's perspective because I might just be too new to everything to speak on this, but I still don't understand how you leave that position at Southern to take that Norfolk State position where, yes, Southern, you got LSU right there. I got you. You're going to be battling a P5 program at every school in the country outside of North Dakota, South Dakota State, and possibly the Montana schools. That's it. That's the only spot you're not battling P5 schools. You really didn't have a group of 5 team that was like suck. Like, I mean, I just, to me, that area is so crowded with schools, especially now with James Madison doing what they're doing at the group of 5 level. I don't see how that was an upgrade to me in terms of job, because I feel like with Southern, yes, he had a problem beating certain teams and et cetera. You can argue that, but I felt like I don't feel like Southern was on the verge of like really. To me, I don't feel like his seat was on fire like it is right now in Norfolk, and it just seems like since he's gotten there, every time you think he's gotten his footing, he just can't get it done. And so this year, I'm worried if you go to another 3-2-1 win year, what are we looking at Dawson Odoms as? And someone in the chat already put it. They think he's losing his job this year, and he's going to end up on staff at Central.
But he got crazy amount of years on that deal. Now I didn't see the leave, the move, but I do know that he has ties to that area, and I get it, and I know that the seat in Baton Rouge was heating up. Now I'm like you, hearsay is hearsay. I know it was heating up, but I don't know if it was like heating up on fire, win it all or be gone, next year, because they essentially had it rolling in the West. That was before we moved over. He essentially had it tied up in the West, and when that came down, it was just like, wait, what? And then, like I said, he got some crazy amount of years off the top. So I was like, okay, I get it, stability. But at the end of the day, I can tell you, man, stability with getting your teeth kicked in every week ain't really what it do. You know what I mean?
No. And I just feel like, to me, Southern is the more prestigious job. Maybe maybe I'm sleeping on Norfolk's history, but like, to me, knowing what I know, knowing the history of HBCU FCS football, sign me up to be the head coach of Southern, even though the pressure is higher. But look, me and you both know the pressure is always going to be higher at more prestigious jobs. If you don't want any pressure, go coach at some random, school, insert name here. I'm not going to call anyone out, but I got some ones in mind, but I ain't going to say them right now. But if you want the prestigious jobs, you want the fame, you want the media attention, you're going to be in a pressure cooker year in, year out, week in, week out. And it just, to me, I don't understand why you would leave Southern, because Southern wasn't prepared. He leaves and Southern spends a year with an intern head coach and doesn't make a real hire until they get Dooley the year after. So to me, none of it adds up. And this is always the media perspective. Coaches, me and you are missing a whole lot of puzzle pieces, but to me, I don't see how the puzzle fits together behind that decision.
No, and neither one of them have really caught their footing since. I know Southern was in the championship game, but it was an ugly appearance. Yeah. They got there by default. I mean, I hope I'm not giving anybody bulletin board material, but let's call it what it is. They got there by default.
Yeah.
And that program is not rolling the way it was when he was there. I mean, if we just want to be honest about it, it was almost a mainstay from 2014 up to the day he left, that they were going to be in that championship game. And then when he left, if you remember correctly, that's when the MEAC started to lose people, lose teams and things like that. So things were heating up, looking better for the SWAC. And, you go pull that move. Again, I know from outside talk that he has ties there, family, things like that. I get it. And maybe that was the end-all be-all decision.
Yeah. Maybe so, man. But let's move on here, man. This is a topic that we were I was talking about with just some people, and I know a lot of people have questions about, because I've been asked this, coach, a million times. I've been asked, is it quarterback? Is it offensive line play? Is it coaching? Is it where we play the games? Is it when we play the games? Let's just keep it a buck. The SWAC specifically, but even HBCU football, we can extend it to the MEAC because the MEAC has not done well out of conference, even though they do have some FBS upsets. The out of the conference struggles have been real, and it really does hurt the perception of the conference. And everyone's wondering what are really the keys to moving forward, winning these out of conference games. So, Coach, I want to ask you, just throughout your history coaching at Alcorn, coaching around college football, has there been anything you've noticed that is it just that game just always happens to be the game the SWAC team doesn't execute? Or is there something you can point to like, man, we got to get better in this area?
I think if you're talking across the board, we're saying FCS versus FCS.
Yeah.
I think for us, and it goes with any football, and it starts up front. And I'm not saying from the defensive line standpoint, from the offensive line standpoint, because everybody, I think it's easier to go find those guys to rush the passer than it is to find those guys to protect the passer. And I think those teams are a little bit, or have been a little bit ahead, or a little bit deeper. I don't want to say ahead, a little bit deeper in those spots. We can roll 5 out there really good. And then a lot of times when you start to sub, you don't have a full 10 to put up there. You've got 2, maybe 3 that slide between whatever slots, whether that's the 2 guard positions, the center guard position. And I think that's where it's kind of been. But for us, the last couple of years since I've been here, we were able to win one last year, the year before as well. And prior to that, we dropped off of just, mistakes, football mistakes, those kinds of things, where you say, you shoulda, woulda, coulda, watching film of other people. And I remember one in particular, Southern was getting ready. Well, they played McNeese, and we were playing McNeese after that. And it was just like the one mistake turned into 2 mistakes. And then before you know it, it was just, they were out of there. I think it was 2018. And then we kind of go down there and we have the same beginning where they boat race us to a 17-0 start. And then we end up losing the game. I think it was 20-17. But, it starts and ends for me up front. I think we're here now. We've leveled it up. I think the transfer portal has given us, the opportunity to go and get better up front. And I think that's where it's been. Now, when you start talking group of 5, I think that part becomes scheduling. You can't expect us to go, and someone posted it a couple of days ago, you can't expect Grambling to consistently go out and almost beat Arizona year in, year out. That just doesn't happen. Scheduling as close to what you have as you can. It does us no sense does us no good to go schedule Alabama week 2 and then we roll in the conference. To me, that's a bad matchup regardless of what they're paying you, just because of your health going into your conference. Now, that's a game you're not going to win, but are we going to be able to get back on the bus and still have a team to play? That kind of thing. So it comes down to scheduling when you get into the group of 5, P5 type thing for me.
Yeah, with the P5, I just want people like the expectation. It becomes a tricky conversation because there's not many FCS teams that realistically can compete with the like. If you remember last year, they ended up losing by I think 7. But going into that game, North Dakota State and Arizona were on the same playing field. North Dakota State may have had less scholarships, but that was a legit game. But when you look across the FCS, the guys who could match up man for man with Arizona is very low. So that's why I don't really want to include the Power 5 in here. Lower group of 5 is a good conversation. FCS, especially because, Coach, I posted it when you guys beat McNeese last year, the first SWAC team to ever beat McNeese.
Absolutely crazy.
And I mean, let me for people who don't know their history, McNeese was really good in the early 2000s. Very good. But since about 05, 06, they have not been a championship team. So, I hear the O-line thing, and I think depth plays more into a part of that, like you said, more so than overall talent. Because when you look at the SWAC, they've developed some really good offensive linemen. But when your left tackle, like Alabama State's a first round prospect, and the guard next to him
It's me.
is average, I don't know if that helps you necessarily against some of the top teams. And I think that's an interesting thing too, is when I compare, you mentioned edge rushers and how they're really easy to recruit nowadays because they're a dominant, you can find them everywhere. What separates the SWAC, in my opinion, from some of the top FCS conferences is when you go look at the size of the top edge rushers in every conference. The SWAC's edge rushers are usually much smaller, a lot faster, and when they move on, they're probably not like a true defensive end.
No,
They're really not just an edge rusher, but more like an outside linebacker type role, more so than like a true bona fide edge rusher.
a
And so
hybrid.
I think that puts, and I think when you look at the offensive lines, you do have size in some leagues, but when you look at the Furmans, you look at the North Dakota States, the Montanas, the Montana States, even the Southeastern Louisianas, they're so much bigger
Yeah.
per pound, like person by person, compared to some of the SWAT schools. Like when FAM plays Southeastern Louisiana, that was a huge difference. General Hunt's great. Isaiah Land is great. You had all these great defensive players, but man, John Allen and those guys went out there and they were just more physical than them. And they were bigger and you couldn't do anything about it. And I think that really stood out to me. And it's weird because let's take out the West Coast, like take out the Big Sky. Let's take them out of the conversation because it's different because they have more access to those Nebraska kids, the Midwestern kids, where they're in their backyard and they're going to go recruit a 6'5", 280-pound country boy who's flipping cows for fun, and it's right in their backyard. And those kids are going to go play at North Dakota State. But in the South, to me, it's so weird to see schools in the SWAC who have a history of developing and putting offensive linemen in the NFL draft, those guys losing those top O-line recruits to places like Southeastern Louisiana, places like McNeese, places like Incarnate Word, Abilene Christian, Sanford, Mercer. To me, that's where I have the disconnect, where it's like, what needs to change in terms of getting these guys to come to your school? Because me and you both know when it gets to the FCS level with offensive linemen, it's a dime a dozen. Because there's a bunch of five-star offensive linemen, but they're going to go play at the Alabamas, the Tennessees, the Auburns, the Georgias, the Floridas, whatever. But when you got that underrated prospect sitting there in the just outside of New Orleans, that kid's got to go to Southern.
Yeah.
He can't go to McNeese. He can't go to Northwestern State. He can't go to Southeastern Louisiana. And I think that's the biggest thing, because this is what I think. There's some people in the chat who know where I'm going with this. I had this conversation on, I want to say, Scotty's show a while back. No one wants to talk about right now. Everyone wants to say the SWAC is the SWAC and we're playing for the Celebration Bowl. That's cool. But guess who you're still competing against day in and day out on the recruiting trail? You better go beat Southeastern in January when it's not on the field. They're beating you for these recruits. And then when that team ends up going to beat this, if you face them out of conference, face them in, like the FAMU went and played in the playoffs, go back and look 4 years ago. No one was talking about FAMU was competing with these same schools for these recruits, and they were losing those battles. And I think that's something that gets overlooked in this conversation all the time, because so many fans are like so isolated in their little world, just following their team, that they don't realize the number of recruits that they're losing to these schools.
Yes, and that's a real deal. That happens. And then you mentioned McNeese before the transfer portal. That's where you got in trouble, so to speak. That's where you went. There, maybe Texas A&M Kingsville or something like that. That's where those guys went. But now that it's open, you're exactly right. We got to be able to get in there and get those guys that are going to those places. I don't know what the real answer is. I'm not going to give the cry of the facilities and things like that. I'm not going to give that. Because I face that. I face kids that's Bowling Green and Toledo, and it's like, hey, you can either come here, play, and be ready to go right now, have a great college experience, play in front of thousands of people week in, week out. Go to Akron, no pun intended, go to Akron, freeze, get your teeth kicked in front of 3,000, win a game here, win a game there. And, it's all in what the kid wants. I think a lot of times the kids are seeing bigger than better, bigger is better. But then when you break it down to them, like, hey, man, we're on the same level. It's no different going to Southeastern than coming to Alcorn. The only difference is, X, Y, Z, that kind of thing. So we've got to get the small things together, which we're working on here, which I'll keep under my hat, but I'll give you a special tour here for one of our shows before we start camp. I'll give a tour just because. And I think those are the things that the kids want, the little small amenities, things like that you've got to have to win those battles, especially when, like you said, the kid's in New Orleans and he's got Northwestern, he's got Southeastern, us, he has options. So you've got to have things to tip it in your favor.
Yeah, and to me, like, I don't think there's a one size fits all because, like, we could compare out of conference games. Like last year, Alcorn was the better team when they faced Stephen F. Austin week 1. And let's just be honest, it came down to one position. And we know the position that it ended up coming down to, and it put you guys in a bad spot. Plus, it was a very tough game because the rain delays and I mean, everything that could have went wrong. So it comes down to small things like that. And then you talk about Southern with McNeese. It's that quick start. You can't let them get up on you 17-0. So there's different things that fit different people. But to me, O-line depth, and it's always going to come back down to me. No one pays attention. And it happens at the P5 level because you got beat reporters for every team, and there's 10 guys. Yeah, like everyone knows what's going on. But the average fan at the FCS level, especially in the SWAC, they pay attention to the guys that their school lands. But who are you losing guys to? Who are you winning guys over? Because it's cool if you land an all-state kid out of Louisiana. Who did you beat for him? That's the key to me in these recruiting things. That's why if you go look at all my articles on our website, he committed to Alcorn over offers from X, Y, and Z. He committed to North Dakota State over offers from X, Y, and Z. Who are you beating on the recruiting trail? Because guess what? That correlates directly with who you're beating on Saturdays when it comes to August through December. And then combined with how do you develop that kid? That's the other big thing is if you can go recruit all these top number 1 classes. Ask Campbell. The signing day post do not win you games in the fall.
No.
That's huge.
And the same thing with facilities. I get it, but facilities haven't scored 1 point any Saturday from 20 years ago to now. Now, does it help you get guys that can help you score points? Most definitely. But those things, like you just said, it don't necessarily translate to, oh, we winning everything. It doesn't add up. You got to be able to have the right pieces, the people to coach the right pieces, and then be able to get the right pieces to gel with the other right pieces to make it all right.
Man, keep pushing on here. This coach, you sent me this topic. I really, really was interested in it. I think this is a great topic for the show. And I moved this one to third because I know we're going to cut this off about 45 minutes or so. So if we got to push the next topic to the next show, I'm cool with that. I wanted to get into this one though. Celebration Bowl contenders, conference championship contenders. It's always fun because listen, it's July 19th when we're on this live stream. Everybody thinks their team can win it all. But as we all know, everyone watching this replay, me and Coach, everyone cannot win it all. There are every year coming into the year, like when I look at the FCS, I think there are 7 teams that can realistically win the FCS national title this year. That's it. Everyone else is just playing to figure it out and maybe make a nice run. But I think there's only 7 teams, and I will bet that one of those 7 teams will hold the trophy in January at the end of the year in Frisco. So me and Coach really want to break down how many HBCU teams, 1, can realistically win the Celebration Bowl, and 2, realistically win their conference championship? And we'll even extend this to Hampton, Tennessee State, North Carolina A&T. Coach, let's start with the SWAC East.
You call them out. Let's go.
How many teams in the SWAC East, and we'll go all three levels at one time. How many teams in the SWAC East do you think can, one, get to the Celebration Bowl, two, win the SWAC championship, and then three, get to the SWAC championship?
Win the East, I really think there's realistically three, possibly four. The people up the street, FAMU, and the two Alabama schools. And the one Alabama school is a question mark for me because I don't know who they have directing their offense. They got a lot in, but they also lost a lot. The other Alabama school, they have a small chance. But it's just, again, it comes down to their trigger man and also what they have to go along with that star defensive player to get them through. The other two, the team in Tallahassee, I mean, they're right there. I think their biggest hurdle is going to be in Miami. And then the team up the street, their biggest hurdle is also going to be in Miami. But I would take the team in Tallahassee right now and put them one to win the East just because of number 8. We know who he is. We don't know who that guy's going to be with the team up the street. And I know more times than not, people don't believe it, but that really plays a part in what you're trying to do. The trigger guy.
Yeah, I think with the SWAC East, I think you have 2 true Celebration Bowl contenders. You have 3 teams that could realistically win the SWAC championship and 4 that could possibly get there. I think A&M is the team that could get there. But I don't think that right now, I don't see enough with the question marks at quarterback, the question marks on the defensive line outside of Zarian Hayes, the question marks at linebacker, and also what that defensive backfield is going to look like. I can't predict that they're going to win the SWAC this year. But if let's just be honest, anytime Maynard can find a quarterback that can emerge, he becomes a threat. Yep. That's why I can't count them out entirely, but right now I don't see a SWAC championship team. But if everything clicks, I could see them making a run to possibly get there if everything falls correctly. I think when you get to Bama State, the defense is there, man. They're going to be so good defensively. I think they did a good job replacing what they lost on the defensive line, but I need to see that talent that looks good on paper produce something. You know the linebackers are going to be great. Bubba's going to go put up 150 tackles this year and yawn after it. That's just how good he is. You've got Adrian Maddox in the back end, who I think was the SWAC freshman of the year last year. I think he's one of the best defensive backs in the FCS. You've got Mikey Victor on one side. Your safety position, I think you've got guys that can step up in place of Urshad Davis, but we'll see. So I think it's just all offensive questions, which is why I wouldn't make them a Celebration Bowl contender.
Those are my teams.
Yeah, like D Davis, this is the year. Like at the end of the day, the spotlight's going to be on number 4. Yeah. And it's going to be number 4 in those Alabama State colors with the hornet on his helmet. If this year he does not produce, I don't know. Like they went and got you a new quarterback coach. They shipped out the guy who was your main competition for the job. And there's no more excuses.
That's the deal. This could go bad really, really quick because if the kid that left, if they're reading in the newspaper where he's having success and this guy that's with us is less than, like, man, what are we doing? And that thing could go from here real quick.
Yeah. I mean, you got to figure it out. They got the wide receivers. They do. They got talent. Keyshawn Johnson's legit. They got some good slot guys. The offensive line, we'll see. I don't think they'll be bad. I won't put them in my top 5, but I think they'll be solid. I'll put it like that. The running game, they lost their top guy in Ja'Cory Merritt, but they returned some nice talent there. It's just all been like D said in the chat. Will the real D Davis please stand up? That's the motto for the year for Alabama State. Then I think when you look at Jackson and FAM, I don't think it surprises anyone. Like, those are the two teams in this division that I think have the talent to take this division all the way to Atlanta. I think we'll start with FAM. The wide receiving unit's loaded. Offensive line is great. I mean, the running game's my biggest question. And I hear Willie Simmons year in and year out say, we're going to get back to the run. We're going to try to establish this running game. And it just never seems to like get put together. And so is that going, because Musa is going to have a run game to help him develop as a passer. We saw that last year. If you shut down the run, it puts so much pressure on Musa to go find Xavier Smith, who he doesn't have this year. And the offense kind of shut down. And it put a lot of pressure on a really talented defense, who I think is going to be really good. Defensive tackle, General Hunt. Edge rusher is my biggest question for them defensively.
Yeah.
The past few years, they've had a guy and Isaiah Land to go get the quarterback. You had Gentle Hunt. You had Savion Williams 2 years ago. Who is that next guy to go get the quarterback on the defensive line? Because Gentle Hunt's great as a D tackle, but he's not a pass rusher. Who is your next great pass rusher? Kamari Stevens is out. Isaiah Land graduated. Who steps up next? Isaiah Major, Jordan Moore, both proven at linebacker. No questions there. And their secondary, it loaded as well, man. I think this could be Kendall Bowler's breakout year at cornerback, and he's just a bigger version of BJ, man.
And if they don't have that edge rusher, he's gonna get all the opportunities he wants to prove that he's that guy, you know.
Exactly. And with Jackson, yeah, they lost a lot. Yeah, they got a new head coach, but they're kind of sitting in that same position I feel like Incarnate Word was last year, where everyone was saying the same thing. You got a first-time head coach who's, it's funny enough, coached the same position that TC did under Prime too, and was a first-time head coach. They went and got a journeyman quarterback who everyone said he's hit a ceiling. The wide receiver unit, not proven, kind of similar to Incarnate Word outside of Taylor Grimes last year. Offensive line, new pieces, brought in some really talented pieces, similar to Incarnate Word last year. Defense was supposed to be atrocious for Incarnate Word. Ended up being pretty damn good with like 8 all-conference guys. And I think when you go look at Asayas Guthrie, no one in the SWAC is going to say that kid can't ball out, because he's going to be one of the top players in HBCU football. He was at Delaware State. I've always said my question is, that linebacking core worries me. I'll be honest. I think, and I said this last live stream we were on?
Yeah.
Aubrey Miller won games for Jackson State last year. And then 2 years ago, you had Keontae Hampton in there as well. Who steps up in that linebacker role? That's my one big question. I think Antonio Dole will be a solid edge rusher, but is there going to be a guy to develop across from him, similar to how you always have kind of had to with Houston and Gaddy and then Justin Reagan kind of popping up last year? Who's all going to step up for them? But I do feel like they have enough talent to get there if everything works out and Jason Brown steps up in that QB spot. Or I know Jacoby Morgan's got some hype, but I really do think, I don't know if you disagree, Coach, that I think Jason Brown's probably going to be the guy for Jackson.
That's the word on the street. And I think he, with his track record, I'd be surprised if he's not the guy that starts it out, just because he has the experience, so to speak. He's a name that we know. But again, like you said, there's just so many. There's a lot of kids in that quarterback room. So, you just don't know how that's going to play out. And a lot of things change, man, when those live bullets start coming, bro. You
can't simulate that. You
cannot simulate that. And we know in practice those guys have on red jerseys. So they know everything is controlled. Now, when that first thing, that guy with the stripes does that and that Clark starts to roll, then we'll see. Hopefully it's not too late for them to understand who the guy is, but I think he's got to be the guy that steps in between the lines first.
Shifting over to the SWAC West, Coach, give me your contenders over there in the West.
Contenders, Prairie View, because 2 years ago they were there in the championship game. Southern, because they were there. You got to give them that. And everybody keeps saying Texas Southern. So, I'll give them that. Um, we looking up. We're from the bottom. So no need to talk about us. Um, Realistically, I think Southern, you have to give them the nod because, like I said, they're the defending. But they have a lot of question marks as well for what Coach Dooley likes to do offensively. The question marks they have, I think, really looms big for them in their system. And then the same thing with Prairie View. They returned guys, but they lost a lot. So, you know, Texas Southern. I won't say it like he does. With Mr. Body. The rumblings on the street is that he's going to run through everything in the conference, and he's going to put the team on his back. And I think the wild card is the black and gold team. They got the big kid from the other school, from the other conference, who has a massive arm. They have some pretty good receivers, really good receiving core. Now, will they be able to protect him? And will they have a running game that goes along with it, with what his name leaving early? And then defensively, Coach Story's going to have them play, really good. He's going to have them up. But they had a lot of mental laps last year, in watching them. But they got some guys that can go get the quarterback, so you got to throw them in there in that tweener situation. But, I would give the nod to Southern, even though we don't know who's going to be the one or the two, kind of thing. And, they're playing it close to the vest. So we'll see. That's my deal on that one.
I'll be honest.
I left us out of it,
Yeah, I don't know why you did that, but I'll let it slide. It's like anti-Homer on the show, but I'll say this, and I try to be as real as I can with my predictions. I like to be as accurate as possible. You guys know how I am with my pick 'em. I get pissed if I lose a game. I'm just competitive, but I really think there are 5 teams out of the 6 that can get to the SWAC championship.
Oh,
There's so many question marks with everybody. It's just going to come down to who checks the most boxes for me. Southern, can we please get a quarterback? Make a LinkedIn post, something, man. We got to get a quarterback in there. It's just ridiculous at this point. They got 19 quarterbacks on the roster, and they all do something good differently. And if none of them work out, I don't know how you got that many guys in the quarterback room that aren't good. Someone's got to click, right? Just statistically, someone has to work out for Southern. They got too many bodies in the room, not for somebody to be able to throw the football efficiently. Now, it looks like Harold Blood is probably going to be the guy. To me, I still think mid-season, if he's not producing at the level that he should, you got to put one of those freshmen in there, preferably the hometown kid out of Baton Rouge. I think both of their ceilings are higher than anybody else in that Southern quarterback room. Just when I look at their film, look at their potential, look at who Southern out recruited for those guys. One of those looks like a true pro style quarterback who can just launch it. The kid out of Woodward with a little bit of athleticism. The kid from Southern, my God, that kid can be electric. He can run it, he can throw it. He's a little bit raw, but I think with a little bit of refinement, man, that kid could be that's a SWAC Offensive Player of the Year potential kid. He was the highest rated recruit that any FCS team signed this past season.
Yeah.
The kid is legit.
He fits the mold for
Yes.
what Dooley likes to play with a quarterback,
Yeah, so I think that's the guy. We'll see what Blood does, but I still think it's the freshman. I think all their other question marks are kind of soft. Their offensive line's always pretty good. They got talent at wide receiver. The running back room loaded. Defensive line's a little bit of a question mark. I really like Shelby Givens. Like what that kid brings as a young defensive lineman. So I think they'll be okay. Jalen Campbell, that linebacker unit's fine. The secondary, we know what it is with Christian Davis, Jordan Carter, all those guys. The other kid from Bowie who didn't even play last year, I want to say is Dimitri Morcell. They got talent. It's just quarterback play. And last year, that's what separated Southern from a team who could make it to the SWAC championship and a team that could win. If they figure out quarterback, they move into that. We can get to Atlanta and compete for a real championship team if they can just figure out quarterback. But that's a huge question mark after what I've seen over these past 2 seasons. I think getting to you guys again, all the answers are there. It's just, is Tyler Macon going to be the guy everyone thinks it can be? Because if he hits what his ceiling is in terms of what all the media coaches have speculated, Alcorn's going to be brutal to play with Jarvion and Nico and most of the offensive line coming back. Probably going to have 2 all-conference guys on the O-line. The wide receiver with Monterio's perfect. You got Malik in the slot. I mean, the questions are answered offensively. Malachi Bailey, Cullen Scott on the defensive line. Of course, you got Terrence, the linebacker, who's going to be an all-conference guy. And most of the secondary is coming back. Not many question marks outside of quarterback. So that's why I put both of those teams in that easily could win the division if it's just quarterback. And then same with Grambling. What Miles Crawley are we going to get? And then same for Texas Southern. Is Andrew Body going to be healthy? Is his wide receivers going to develop enough to give him some help? Because they were atrocious last year. And just can he stay healthy? That's another big question mark. And then, of course, with PV, I'll say this. I'll put PV borderline. I think they got a great running game. Trezon can do his thing. I just don't know if they lost enough defensively to really come out of the West. I think it's going to be a gauntlet, but are they going to be good enough defensively to stop Grambling? With a new OC, with Miles Crawley, with Lyndon Rash, are they going to be good enough to stop Alcorn with Jarvion Howard, Nico Duffy, Monterio, good enough to stop Southern's run game? They're going to be good enough to beat Andrew Body. Once again, they have a little streak, but is PV going to be that good? That's my question. But the other 4 teams easily, I think, can get to the SWAC championship.
I like that. And, didn't want to call our show bias, so I stayed away from us. But I think we learn a lot about the West early. And, that's a good thing. You're not waiting around till week 7. I think you learn a lot by week 3, week 4 about who you have and what everybody else has in the West, just because of the way the schedule's set up. I know some people don't like that. I know some people were crying about the fact that Pham and Jackson jumps out. It's unfair to whoever loses. But to me, I think that's a plus. I used to love watching the Florida State Miami game, Labor Day weekend, opening up the season, because right now where you are, where you stand, whether you're chasing or you're trying to maintain, and from the teams that are watching, now okay, we got to get to work. Those guys are really good. Or now we got to get to work to maintain. So when we get to this team here, we're able to put them 2 games behind. We're able to gain a game, that kind of thing. So I love the way the schedule's set up for us to be able to watch and see some teams early and kind of know where we are. So who's the team that doesn't have it?
UAPB, I didn't pick them. Okay. They're too new. Like
don't know anything about them.
Yeah, like I told, I think it was on the show. I told you what that one person told me. They said that they could have just picked 2 random people off the street and brought to media day. No one would have said anything. No one would have.
Nobody would know.
Yeah, no one would have known. They just got too many question marks. Looking at the schedule though, I mean, when you go past the SWAC championship, I think Alcorn, Southern would probably be the 2 teams I put into like go to the Celebration Bowl category. I think Grambling has a lot of question marks secondary wise. I haven't seen Crawley win any big games yet, and I feel like I'm less certain about their offensive line and also just some of the other external pieces they have. And also, Hugh Jackson's got to show me he can win. I've seen Fred McNair win. I've seen Eric Dooley win. Can Hugh Jackson win that big game? That's why I don't put Grambling there. And the same reason I don't put Texas Southern in that category is because I have yet to see McKinley win the big game as well.
I like that. That's why we got this show together, man. I like that.
Yeah, you got, like, to me, and it's no disrespect. It's just, you got to, when you're making these kind of predictions, you got to, like, comb through the fine hairs. you got to prove it to me eventually. Like, I know the other side, Willie and TC haven't proven they can win the big game yet, but they're really not going up against like that division is not as tight as the West, in my opinion. So that's why I think it
Definitely.
changes. When I look at the MEAC though, Coach, we'll go off the MEAC here. I think it's obvious. We just talked about it kind of in the media day preview to kind of shorten this segment up. It's those top teams that we just talked about. I think Central, Howard, and South Carolina State. I'd throw Morgan as a borderline if they can figure out the QB situation. Their defense is elite. But until I know more about Carson and what that quarterback position is going to look like, I can't put them in the Celebration Bowl category. Could they win the MEAC? Yes. But when we're talking about Celebration Bowl, Buddy's proved he can do it. Obviously, Central can do it. They just did it. And then Howard just seems like that team that has all the pieces. Can they put it all together and win the games they need to win on their schedule to get to that spot?
That's another coach that has to put that on his resume, the big game, and then they've got to, and I know they say they won't do it, man, but they've got to figure out a way that there's no four-way ties and then somebody gets to the Celebration Bowl because of point differential or they have one less turnover than the other team. They've got to figure out a way to make it a true deal. A true deal.
I got to get your opinion, and we're going to move the last topic to our next live stream just so we can end it on time. But I think, okay, I get if it's a 3 to 4-way tie because you have to have a way to kind of break that. But if it's I don't believe in the 2-way tie that they had last year. That's dumb. Because a 2-way tie is stupid because everyone plays each other.
Right.
We saw Howard get beat by 30 points like 2 weeks earlier, but it's a co-championship. Bro, we saw the head. Like, I get
you played the team.
Yeah, like I get the New Hampshire William and Mary co-championship in the CAA because they didn't play, or the OVC one with SEMO and UT Martin. They didn't get to play. I saw Central dog Howard for 60 minutes on the field. That's not a co-champion. Now, if it's and with the 3-way tie, if they all beat each other, I got you. But if it's a case in a 3-way tie, even I know if like let's say Central gets upset by Delaware State and Norfolk, but they go beat South Carolina State and Howard, it's a 3-way tie. If you beat the two other teams, that's not a co-champ either. Like you beat the two teams that were tied with you. To me, if you win the head-to-head in a tie break situation, like that's not a co-champ. The co-champ should be for the 4-way tie where it's all weird and you got to go to like a coin toss. Yeah, but if you played 2 weeks earlier, bro, that's not a co-champ.
That to me, and it's really not even a question because to me you answered it. I get what the bylaws and the tree laws. I get all that, but at the end of the day, we played each other in between the lines. There was not a tie. One team won.
Yeah.
At the end of the season, if it came down to the team that beat the other team is the team that wins it. I mean, I don't understand how you do that.
The reason it makes no sense to me is because there's top. Okay, so let's take it national. And let's not even go conference. Let's go division, SEC division or whatever. There's no co-champions. One team's got to go to the SEC championship. It doesn't matter if LSU got upset by Vandy. They won the division. If they beat Bama head-to-head and they're both sitting at 7-1, the West champion is LSU. It should be the same way for the MEAC. We don't need to overcomplicate this because I'm of the mindset, I know this is going to be controversial, and that's cool. The MEAC does not need a championship game. You have 6 teams. Yeah. 6. And we're going to have a championship game? We're going to allow like 20% of the damn conference to go to the championship game? Like, stop this. It's until you need to have 8 to 10 teams to have a legit conference championship game. You can't send a third of your conference to the conference championship game.
I'm with you on that. And unless you add teams, I'm with you on that. If you don't add any teams, then everybody plays everybody. So that works itself out to me. There's no way that all 6 of us, there's no way that 4 of us should end up with rings at the end of the year. That just does not make sense. And in last year's case, again, like you said, they played each other. One team won. It wasn't a tie. One team won. That is the team that walks away with the banner. That's the team that gets the ring. You know?
Yeah, I'm with you. I don't know. I get. I just think people are like obsessed with conference championship games now because now everybody needs a conference championship game. No, they don't. Bro, there's no reason a 6-team conference should have another game added onto that when because
No.
God forbid, what would have happened? So let me ask you, like, let's say they got a championship game. Howard and Central play the final week of the season. We're gonna go play that game again a week later at the same location, God forbid. Like,
And
what
then
is the
what
point of
happens if
that?
Howard wins? What is NC saying then?
Oh,
You
I'd be
know?
pissed.
Now, being on the other side from the other conference, I do think they should be doing something while we're playing a championship game, getting ready for the Celebration Bowl. I don't think they should be able to sit there and just have surgery, heal up, break down half the season, all that. Now, I do think that puts the one side of the Celebration Bowl at a disadvantage. Um, and anybody that, they may have a different opinion, but from being inside the game, and they always say, well, it can work both ways. They can come out rusty. Yeah, no doubt. Rusty and rested versus beat up and banged up. That's two different things. Rested legs, beat up legs, two different things. Never gonna make an excuse, but you know, you can't substitute that month of rest. You can't do it.
I just think it makes it so hard because one, they don't play a conference championship game, and then two, Southern and Grambling play
Yeah,
after the season's over. So I think the Bayou Class, I listen, Southern fans are going to hate me for this. So are Grambling, that's cool. So are Alabama State. The Turkey Day Classic and the Bayou Classic are the most inconvenient games of all time. Like let's just put it like this: 3 teams are causing the SWAC more headaches than anything is worth. I mean, at the end, like you can't even play those 2 games during the season. You have to wait till there's literally no other regular season games being played in the FCS to get that game in. It has to be then, right? Like it has to be that. Like that's the problem. Is like I know it's never going to change. It's tradition, cool, because of a schedule shift. That those 2 games literally are the whole reason the problem even exists.
yeah. Turkey Day Classic, I never really understood. Um, but again, I don't know that history or how that originated. Never really understood that game. But I grew up watching the Bayou. Um, Timing wise, before there was no Celebration Bowl.
Yep.
So it worked out. But now there's a Celebration Bowl. Um, I pitched it on one of my spaces. I was trying to get in touch with Mr. Grant. Mr. Grant, we need to turn this thing into a 4-team playoff. You know, uh, play it at neutral sites. Winners move to Atlanta. It's an easy fix. And
It
people
will
are
be
going to come.
fixed. It will be fixed next year, though. I will say this: when the FCS has to play 12 regular season games starting the next 2 years,
Yeah.
that will help because the whole FCS schedule will have that extra week. So the Bayou Classic and the Turkey Day Classic will be the last week of the season finally. And so that actually does kind of help the schedule, which they also were kind of tossing around making the Celebration Bowl part of the FCS playoffs because they're talking about pushing it back and making the FCS playoffs that first week, that same week of the Celebration Bowl, making that game an FCS playoff game. But that's a whole nother conversation for another show. I got that news the other day. And the goal is to have the FCS National Championship the same week as the FBS National Championship and make it like a weekend thing. But that's a whole nother conversation for another show. Just going to throw that out there. But if the FCS can play 12 games, that solves the issue because the MEAC will play that week then.
They would have to. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you would really just have the SWAC championship. And so the MEAC would have a 3-week break and the SWAC would have a 2-week break.
Yep.
Which I guess that's really not that bad. That's like that's just having that one extra week.
Yeah, I'll take that.
So yeah, so I think it will be fixed when we go to 12 games. But I'm not saying the Bayou Classic should move. I'm just saying that's really the holdup is like the Bayou Classic and Turkey Day Classic aren't played on like a legit week of FCS football. So, but now going back to 12 games, I think it will. And I hope they stick at 12 games because that opens up the SWAC to play more out of conference games and the MEAC's going to be playing like 9 out of conference games at this point. So
unless they add,
based on what I'm hearing, I don't know who they're going to add. That's the problem. Is like who's ready to move up, and that's always been my question because Winston-Salem ain't going anywhere. Savannah State ain't making that move again.
No.
Who you taking?
I think yeah, that's another show because I mean I just think there's some that you've gotta. To me, there's certain schools that if I'm the MEAC, I think you've got to go and try and talk them into coming just because of who they are. And where they are, kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm trying to because Zoe said Virginia State maybe. I guess that could be a possibility. The team that I wish would be ready, I don't know. I'm a football guy. I don't know money. I don't know contract. Like I'm just a football dude. Bowie State would be perfect, but based on what I've been hearing. They're not even in the conversation, so I'm assuming they don't have any sort of the resources to move up.
They would be scared.
Damon Wilson would be pissed. He'd be like, man, I built this program up, and now y'all going to come in here and bother my new conference. I know some people are saying Albany State, Fayetteville State, potentially. I mean, those are all good options. Yeah, I like outside of that, I'm just trying to think like realistically.
Fort Valley and Albany, to me, are more SWAC-ish. Those schools to me goes against why the other schools broke away because of the travel. But when you talk Virginia State, that's all to me relative, to travel for everybody there, so to speak. I think you've got to try and go back and get the schools you lost, which I mean that's probably beating a dead horse, but I think you got to do that, and then I think you got to go talk to Tennessee State. I just think you got to go talk to them. I know they're not coming, but I think you've got to go talk to them.
They won't even consider the SWAC. There's no chance they're considering the MEAC. Tennessee State would have a better chance of joining the SoCon at this point than the MEAC, in my opinion. And so someone in the chat said they just need to go get Valdosta State in West Florida and just call it a day.
They are not. Hey, look here. I don't know if people really realize what West Florida is. But,
a sleeping giant?
Man. Nah, we don't need that. We don't need them headaches.
No, not at all. And wait, September 16th. Listen, it's not going to be a blowout. I'm just going to throw it out there. Unless they fall off a cliff after Shinnick left, it's going to be a competitive game down there in Tallahassee.
All right, no doubt. And they're going to be sky high for that game too as well.
What, they beat McNeese 2 years ago?
Yeah. Had it rolling.
Man, Coach, we said we're going to keep it to 45 minutes when we always go over an hour. But, guys, make sure to hit the like button, man. I do want to give a shout-out. I missed it earlier because we were just deep in conversation. Let me scroll up here because someone joined the membership. Shout out to David Williams, man. Thank you for becoming a member. If you want to be a member, the link is on our homepage, I believe, and it should be just below this. It should just say join, and you can become a member, man. Cheap, you get some perks. Me and Coach are gonna bust back open the film breakdowns coming soon, and during the season we got something real special being planned for the season in terms of film breakdown and stuff, so stay tuned for that. But guys, for my guy Coach Fred, for myself, and for the Bluebloods, we'll be back next Wednesday, man. We're probably just going to keep Wednesday 7 p.m. weekly live streams. I'm going to be in Norfolk this weekend, man. Exclusive one-on-one interviews with all the MEAC players, MEAC head coaches. And then next week, of course, the SWAC Media Day is going to be a big day. I know you guys are looking forward to all the one-on-ones. And me and Coach Fred might have to go live that night, man. Just recap everything that happened. So we might move it up to Tuesday night. We'll let you guys know. But guys, for Coach Fred,
Coach Fred McNair.
Hey, the quarter zips are undefeated. He's going to pull out the freshest all-corn quarter zip that he can wear to Media Day. But, guys, for Coach Fred, for myself, and for the Bluebloods, man, we are out for right now.